Welcome to Kardec Radio, where you nourish your soul daily. As you wait for our next program on the way to the light, visit Kardec Publisher at kardecpublisher.com to check out our latest books. Also, check out our Kardec Flicks, Spiritism in a Click. Just go to kardecflix.com. And now with you, our host, Angy Stewart, with the program On the Way to the Light. Enjoy it.
Good evening, my friends. This is Angy Stewart from INNERLIGHT, and we are here live on Kardec Radio. Super happy to be here with you all. This is our first program of the new year. So happy new year to all of you. I hope this will be a very good year. As we all know, life is always full of challenges, difficulties, but it's up to us to be positive, to be strong, to continue with our prayers for a better world, and with our own positivity. Because if we start the year negative, thinking about all kinds of problems that we all know are happening, then you connect with negative energy and then nothing good happens. So let's keep up with our positiveness. Let's keep up with our good humor. Let's connect with good things like here, Kardec Radio, where you can learn so much, where you can listen to so many beautiful books. And there are so many different hosts. So it is a blessing to have this program in English, spreading Spiritism. And I'm super, super happy to be a host for so many years. This is wonderful. We have been studying so many books throughout all those years. And this is the continuation of this one, On the Way to the Light. This book changed my life because all of you if you have never read this book, my God, you have no idea what you're missing, because this book really changes our perspective, our understanding of our own planet, the civilizations that were in this planet and the ones that came to our planet. The famous Capella that in every single Spiritist center, people talk, the civilizations from Capella. Yes, so in this book, you can learn about them, who they were. And tonight is a special night. We are studying chapter 7. Chapter 7. And chapter 7 talks about the people of Israel. The people of Israel. So there are so many important things in this chapter. But just for you to know, the chapters are very thin. They are not like 50 pages like in some of the other books that we read and we studied. So it's really good. It's an easy way of reading and a lot of concentrated knowledge. So I invited two experts to join me tonight so we can have a wonderful conversation and we can boost our knowledge. But obviously, this is never like you read for yourself. So if you can read for yourself, sometimes can be a little complicated, and then you listen to our conversation, then this would be really fantastic. So before we start, I invite all of you to have your water so we can do our initial prayer, and then you can have your medication for the week if you go to a Spiritist center. If not, as I always say, when your water reaches to very low, put more water, do another prayer, and ask for the Spirit to refuel with good vibrations your own water. if you are in a location that you don't have a spiritist center, for example. So let's close our eyes for a few seconds and connect with the good spirits. God, our Mother and Father, thank you for the opportunity of continuing studying, continuing improving, continue our pathway towards goodness. And at this moment, I ask the good spirits to come close to us, to all of us, to myself, my two guests, that we will be talking about this chapter in the book On the Way to the Light tonight, but also to come closer to our brothers and sisters who will be listening to this conversation live and maybe in the recording version, so we all can be well inspired, guided, and we can understand it better. Stay with us. So be it. Very good. So I will open the chat here. So if you are here, if you are going to be joining us, please write something, say hello, put your name. That's the only way that I can know that you are here with us. So I will bring my guests now. Hello, Brian.
Hello. How is everyone today?
Very good. We love Florida.
Yes.
So, Brian, just for the public to know, we are starting 2026. Give us a little introduction. How you end up, how did you meet me, and how you end up here? I know our history, it's long.
Yes, it is long. It is.
You can make it short.
Yeah, because like last year, 2025, celebrated my 20th anniversary of being introduced to the doctrine and Spiritism in general. So I'm going into 21 this year in March. So I'll be celebrating my 21st year since being introduced to the doctrine. I always make a joke because I remember I was still baby Spiritist and going to the very first Spiritist symposium in Baltimore. I was like so new, and we had this very first Spiritist symposium in Baltimore. And now here we are. We just celebrated the 19th one last year and moving on. So,
wow, that's amazing history. I didn't even know you started in Baltimore. That's super nice.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, and then I got a chance to meet you with when we were both part of the Tri-State Spiritist Federation up there in New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, together, and integrating the different centers up there. So,
yes, my God, when did you move to Florida?
During the pandemic of 2020, I came down in the middle. I came down in the middle of COVID.
Oh wow, that's so funny. I actually thought you moved before me. I moved here in 2017. I thought for some reason you had moved before me. So you moved in a good time, because New York, New Jersey during the pandemic was really complicated. Really.
Yeah.
And you know, in Florida was almost like, whoa, it's a little too crazy too.
That had a significant influence on why I'm here. I was looking at that time. I was looking at Texas and New York, or not New York, Texas and Florida, and North Carolina were the three places I was looking for places to move to.
Oh, okay. You were searching in a warm location anyway, warmer.
Yes, I have a medical issue, so.
But even without medical issues, that's a good option. Let's bring our other guest for tonight. Hello, Mark. How are you?
I'm excellent. Happy New Year to you both. Good to see you, Brian.
Good to see you too.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year. We are just talking about hot weather.
Well, I actually have just had 2 days of sunshine finally. We're starting to dry out.
Yeah. Yes. So, Mark, the same way I did with Brian, give us a little introduction of how you discovered Spiritism, how you came to me, and how it started.
Spiritism found me in 2017 here in the Sacramento, California area, which is literally where I'm calling you from right now. I own a house here, or partially own a house. At any rate, I found Kardec Radio and Angy Stewart within the first 3 or 4 months. And I come from a world of technology, a career of technology where online learning was something I did for decades. So Kardec Radio was just this, fountain of recorded information on all the books, all the chapters, all the perspectives. And for a beginner, it was, idyllic. I didn't have to wait for the meetings every week. I had, and the other thing is, in 2017, I retired. So I had all this time, and as I said, I fell in love with Kardec Radio, and that's how I met Angy, and we developed an online relationship. And then, like Brian, I was searching for warm weather sites. So I had already been to Vegas, I had already been to Arizona, and now it was time to go 3,000 miles the other way, and I came to Florida. And I tried Florida for about a year and a half as a member of MIA INNERLIGHT. And certainly the Floridian Spiritist elements are huge, strong, powerful, educational. And I love Brian's description because that's me too, because this is a perpetual learning process, no matter what time of age you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In my case, Spiritism did not find me until my 60s, but I've come to appreciate that at least it found me. And I am slowly progressing. At any rate, it is great to be here and great to be part of tonight.
Super, super cool. Happy to have both of you. And this is wonderful. 2 Americans. That's awesome. That's awesome. And as you know, the Spiritist Center that I coordinate in Miami is in English for English speakers. We do have Brazilians. Brazilians are everywhere. So we do have Brazilians, but we do have people from many different nationalities as well. And as you know, in Miami, we have a lot of Latin Americans. So a lot of mainly Spanish speakers that also speak English. And this is the main goal. The main goal is to remove this power for just Brazilians or just Portuguese speakers and spread these beautiful teachings to anyone that understands English. And this is wonderful. And super happy to have you both so involved. Both of you study so deeply, and this is a blessing. I'm super happy. So let me just say hello here to some of our friends. Hello, Dorelis. Nice to have you here. Welcome, welcome. Hello, Juan. Happy to see you here as well. So, my friends, again, if you are listening to us, please, we welcome you to send your messages, your comments, your questions, so we can make this conversation even better. I can read your comments and we can learn together. So let's start. Again, our book is On the Way to the Light by the medium Francisco Cândido Xavier and the Spirit of Emmanuel. We have been studying this book for quite a while. It's 1 chapter a month. And this month, we are going to be studying the people of Israel. So, as I mentioned before, this book talks about how our planet was created. This is a very simple summary, but it talks about everything about the planet, even about the Christ's meeting on the creation of the planet, how Jesus became our governor, and then how he started populating the planet, and all these beautiful details, even about the dinosaurs. So at this moment, we are going to be talking about the chapter 7, People of Israel, and I will read a little tiny piece before we start commenting as I always do, and then we will go item by item, doing a little summary so we can all understand. So, okay, Israel. Of all spirits exiled on the earth, the Hebrews were the strongest and most homogeneous race, keeping their characteristics unaltered through every change. In examining these remarkable people in their distant past, we can see that even though they had a great certainty about the existence of God, they were also very proud regarding their conceptions about life and truth. So that's how Emmanuel starts. My friends, what can we add? We will talk about all the portions, but what can we add about this characteristic of the Hebrews?
Oh, heavens.
Well, I'll start then. Because when we were reading through all the four Adamic races, it's funny how we find out we have like we in these previous chapters and everything else, we're finding the one that's like, okay, this is monotheistic. We got God-centric, everything else. But again, they isolated themselves. They're like, as we just read, strongest, most homogeneous, keeping unaltered. So they locked in. So they have been, in some ways, they kind of isolated themselves so that they would preserve the knowledge, preserve their ways. Oh, excuse me. Excuse me. And they would go through and see that they're going through, as we just mentioned, all through history, they've remained the same. They've held that strong culture all through it.
And the funny thing is that they are still like this nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
So I will supplement.
They mingle, they are very open to diversity, but most of the time, even to get married, I have a lot of Jewish friends. Even to get married, they really try to get married amongst Jewish people. And I have a lot of girlfriends, Brazilians, who got married to Jewish, and they were obligated to convert. And I was like, wow. So they were obligated to convert, although they wouldn't be able to have a Jewish kid. And this was news to me. I didn't know. I was like, oh, I thought it was, maybe it's different now. So I can't really confirm, but they got married 15, 20 years ago, and that they all had to be converted. Maybe now it's more open. But anyway, Mark, your point.
I will supplement Brian's comments by saying that I'm blessed to, my lifetime best friend is the son of a Jewish cantor who came to California from New York City. He actually sung with the New York Met. His voice was just fantastic. But I learned much as a teenager, being raised Catholic. I learned much about the Old Testament through my best friend and his father, who took every opportunity to teach me something I did not know. So it is interesting that you selected me for this chapter, because when I started reading this chapter, it was like going back to my youth. But I would say this, that as this opening paragraph states, this is a traditional religion. And in the purest sense of the word, the Jewish faith is still the Jewish faith. Now, it has morphed like every faith has morphed through time. It's called progress, as the spirits teach us. But there's so much history. And if you look at the difference between the Hasidic Jews and the Reformed or Orthodox Jews, they're almost night and day in terms of the religion. On the other hand, the foundation is still the Old Testament and Moses, and Mosaic law is still Mosaic law. It's the interpretation that has changed over the many decades, the many centuries.
Yes. We already studied the Adamic races that became the Europeans, the Americans, and I love. It's every single one is very interesting. Every single one is so like the Indians, but the Adamic were very funny because they had all kinds of problems, but they mingle. They really enjoy. Like, oh, let me see this Terrakian. Oh, come here. Let me know you better. So this one, I was like, wow.
And when you talk about the mingle, I think the most astounding thing to me was the education of knowing what the Middle East was like in terms of mingled elements. Cities were completely integrated with 5, 6 different faiths in tolerance, complete tolerance of each other.
Yeah.
And then things changed in the 30s and 40s.
Yes. Well, you just actually mentioned Moses, and this is the second item that we are going to talk. So, what can we say about Moses?
You want to start this one, or should I
Yeah,
go?
I'll start it. I think there is, especially throughout the Christian world in particular, there is a very misunderstood aspect of who Moses was and what his impact was and so on. And I love this text that kind of straightens that out, because this kind of explanation is not what is normally taught. Like stating that he was a medium, But there's so much more to Moses and this, like I said, this text right here changes a lot of the misnomers of who this man was, his impact, etc.
All right, and then to go on with that one, one of the things I was talking to someone else on the sideways for is like, we were talking about like Abraham before this, and he like plowed the field or prepared the ground. And we have Moses now, who puts the foundation of what's going to be like, the Old Testament. He'll end up writing the Torah for all the Jewish people. So he's doing the foundation. And then, as we're going to talk later on in the chapter, when the Christians come in, they build upon that. They create the next story on top of that foundation. And we're seeing that as we were writing, is one of these things we're talking about, this 10 sacred commandments, for which to this day represent the basis for all justice of the world. It's like when you start and you go through and you go through all 10, they have significance. And even to this day, it's like, even for us to have a weekend is a day of rest, Sabbath day, when we are supposed to stop. And
Yes.
even in that, and part of that commandment too is like, it's not just us. It's like, if we had oxen for the agrarian societies, they have to rest. Everybody rests.
Yes, and for most of us that were able to watch those old movies about Moses, for example, a lot of people that I watched always said, "Oh, this is such a Hollywood, because this is impossible, that is impossible." So many things they used to say, but with our knowledge that Moses was a medium, and a very, very powerful medium, he was able to materialize things. He was able to see a little bit ahead in the future. So he was able to have this connection with the enlightened spirits, to be well inspired and well guided to help his people. And so all these things that we think were impossible, actually, no, they were not impossible. They were possible. And yes, maybe slightly different from what was portrayed in the movies, but they were actually possible to happen. And as you just mentioned, Brian, he was so in tune with the good spirits that in that time, when life didn't mean much, anyone, the pharaoh, could just look at you, kill him, and boom, you're dead. There is no laws, there is no accusation process, court, nothing. Moses was able to create the Pentateuch, well inspired, and until nowadays, as you mentioned, everything is written there. It's good. It's really in tune with our life and with our moral improvement. So that was very, 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 very important and very special. The next item is Judaism and Christianity. So, what are the connection between these two philosophies, these two religions, if we can say so?
Go ahead, Brian.
All right. Well, as I was mentioning in my just in the prior one we were talking about, it's like if the Old Testament Moses is the foundation and maybe the first floor of the house, Jesus and Christianity became like the second story. Or for those that are like were the additional stories on top, we built upon that foundation, expanded it, increased it to, and in some ways simplified it, but in simplifying it, it expanded. When you start thinking, going back to the two commandments, love the God your Father with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. That's essentially the 10 commandments. The two tablets boiled down into two simpler commandments, but they are extremely far-reaching. Because now, and then as Jesus was teaching, is like now we're talking, our thoughts, our deeds are just as accountable. Whereas the Judaism, it's all just actions. And we're seeing that this building upon, and how Christianity takes the Jewish doctrine and explodes it. And also, as we were mentioning before in the beginning, the Judaic people were very proud. They were isolated. But when Christians come into it, now we're bringing the Gentiles, we're bringing in all these outsiders. And what do? As we mentioned earlier, they mingled. They mingled with the Jews, and then they spread out. They spread the message far and wide. So it left the Middle East. It didn't stay in that one area. It expanded and grew thanks to the efforts of Paul.
That's very good. I would also say that in Brian's analogy of foundations and building upon foundations, etc., we have occurring in a relatively short period of time written communications for the masses. The Hollywood image of coming down from the mountain with two tablets probably didn't have two tablets, probably had a different way to scribe. But the point here is that scribing, and as we just made a reference to the Pentateuch, all the different Jewish documents preserved around the world are so valuable because they're consistent. They talk to the morality. Okay? And I believe that Jesus came along and put the morality laws into action. Moses' time was to define them and begin the educational process. And Jesus was the example of what happens when you have, that as who you are, the essence of who you are. And so much more was learned subsequently in the life of Jesus and the documentation of the life of Jesus, but it all starts with that foundation of Judaism. And the evolution of Christianity, I think, recognized the value of the morality.
Yes, that's Jesus himself, when he used to talk about the the law of Moses, he always said, I didn't come to destroy the law. I came to exemplify, to amplify, to spread even more, even deeper. Yes, this is like Moses gave us the foundation. Moses put the cement of the house, and we can say that Jesus built the house with all the examples and how we can live to be better people, and that the real life is not of earth, but it's the spiritual life. And the Spiritism later on came to help us to understand it with mediumistic meetings, with communication, with the spirits, with the understanding of reincarnation. So it's beautiful. It's all a connection. So we continue the process of evolution. So this is very, very nice. The next point is monotheism. So this is an important point because we know, especially just studying this book, we know the previous races, they had many, many gods, like the Hindu, for example, and the Israelites or the Hebrew people, they were monotheistic. So this is one important point. Let's talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
It is interesting that historically, the Hebrews get the credit for establishing the single God principle. Because on other parts of the planet, before, during, after this same time frame, there were variations of monotheism. But you're right, most of the world was multi-God, if you will, carried back from the Greeks. But like I said, history gives the Hebrews, and the Hebrews themselves say that they're the ones who really popularized, I guess is a good way to say it, monotheism.
And then as we go through and study through Spiritism, we're finding out that the power of having that in there. When you're sitting here saying, it's like you have one divine creator, one supreme intelligence, the first cause of all things, Spirit's book number 1. It's that power and how it radiates down, and having one creator that creates all of the entire universe puts a lot of power into it. When you start thinking and you start analyzing, well, when you look at the polytheistic cultures of the past, how they would fight, clash, and have their own styles, we would see their moral failings and stuff like this. It's like, well, how can this world exist as is under each of those different regimes? It's like when you start thinking, it's like, how can Zeus with his things create the world? How could Odin or some of these other cultures that have these things, like how did the earth came to be? And until it goes and says, it's like, no, it has to be one single divine creator whom set all the rules, everything that would become how the universe is made.
Yes. I put myself in that time, and I give a lot of credit to the Israelites, because they were born with this understanding of one God only. And you go back in time, their understanding was like multiple gods, because they thought the sun is a god, the moon is another god. They had this thought, and it was pretty common. But the Israelites, the Hebrew people, they already had this deep connection with God, this memory they brought, that they already didn't know this one God. There is a point here on page 68 that's also worth mentioning, that talks about Moses' mission was to make accessible to the popular sentiment the great lessons that the other initiatives were, were compelled to keep secret. So we know that Moses bringing the Ten Commandments to the whole people also helped the people to have this better understanding of God, not keeping this secret just to the enlightened people, to the people that had more knowledge. For example, in other civilizations like the Egyptians, only the initiated people had a better understanding of communicability with the spirits, this notion of life after death. So this is also very interesting. And now we're going to the choosing of Israel. Why? Why the choosing of Israel?
With great responsibility, with great power, it comes great responsibility. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, this is interesting. There's a perspective in the leadership of the Jewish faith, or in parts of the Jewish faith anyway, that every single challenge facing the Jewish people at every point in time has made them stronger, has made them better, has made them successful, has made them more understanding of why they are here. Now, that's the leadership perspective. That's not necessarily the follower perspective. And a lot of the Jewish leadership are very cognizant of the followers not following.
Mm-hmm. And that can apply to even the Christians too.
Of course, of course, of course.
So, but yeah, because it using another saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And he's like, look at how much persecution they've endured over 5,000 years. And the fact that even some of their trials or suffering is codified in the Old Testament. The 40 years walking in the desert of Exodus, the plagues of Egypt that they themselves had to suffer as well. Then you had them that they were exiled from the promised land, and then allowed to come back. It's like you see that they've had to endure, and through their endurance, they've gained stories on this. You even look at the story of Job and how he's like everything was taken away from him, but he still had his faith, and because of the faith, he not only got everything back, he got tenfold more. But until that time, he went through incredible suffering. And then even when Jesus comes in, after the choosing of Israel, and Jesus comes as an Israelite, as part of this group. So it's like as a group that has endured suffering, will himself suffer the most.
I would just throw something out. There's an interesting dialogue taking place between me and my lifetime friends right now, 3 of which are Jewish. And I simply state the Spiritist principle that wherever we are today in our evolution, we earned this point in time. Something in our past, could be this life, could be a prior life, but something contributed to who we are today, good or bad. Well, that's an interesting perspective to take when you think about Jews and Israel, because it sure seems like a preponderance of missteps, you know, that have resulted in the challenges and the trials over centuries.
Yes, all the races, like all the people in general, we learn through love or through pain. And if we talk about Spiritism, for example, most of people that come to Spiritism, they come because of pain. It's a very few percentage of people that come because they heard of it and they connected. We have a few people that came to me in a light because of this. They heard of spiritism and that they kind of, oh, that's interesting. Let me learn about it. But the majority of the people that come to spiritism is because of pain. They are having some kind of mediumistic problem. They are having some kind of obsession. A family member that just died and the whole family is in turmoil. So they kind of search for some kind of thing that they don't understand. And that's how it's in all civilizations, the Israelites and the Americans, for example. So we all have our ups and downs, and we can never talk about one person, the president of that nation, the president of that, especially now in this moment of turmoil that it's really our planet is kind of going crazy. We need to pray a lot for the presidents of many nations because it's really a difficult time. But throughout history, we understand that we are always improving. And as Brian mentioned, the Israelites, they endure a lot too. And then Moses was this one that came as the first one to prepare the soil for the new plant that was coming, and the new plant was Jesus, who came to give these good examples. But in Spiritism, we don't say that he came to suffer for us. He came to exemplify and help us to understand and push us to follow his example. What is difficult until nowadays, he must be like, my God, these people are really difficult. That's why we reincarnate again. Angela, go again. Go, because that's not enough.
Oh, that's good. Tying right into this next section in the book, Judaism's Incomprehension.
Right.
Goes right
That's
into
good.
it. I was like, you sit there and you look at it, and then having Jesus come in here, and it's like they thought their Messiah was going to come as a general with the legions and everything else, and then they're all that pride. They were saying like, oh, we'll be exemplified, we'll be free, and everything else, and it's like, no. What was Judaism's original mission? It's like, you're given a mission to teach monotheism to the world, to be the example for the rest of the world to do. And it's like they lost their way. They got, like you were saying before, you had the people that knew it, and then you had the followers who weren't following. And so you had to have someone coming here and says, and then Jesus coming in and says, I will be the ideal Jew. I will be the example. It's like, I will go through and I will be what the mission was supposed to be. I fulfilled to every dot of the law. He goes, he helps, he teaches, he instructs, not just the Jews, but he spreads out to all of God's creation, to as far as he could walk. He went to all these Gentiles, all these different people to spread the word. It says, no, there's love. You can, if you work together, help each other out, then you can do great things, and don't have to sit there and beat the living snot out of everyone. You give them a hug, you give them a loaf of bread, you heal their wounds, and you do much better with that than you ever do with a sword. And it's like, that's a powerful message, and we still to this day have a hard time with that. Going on what you were mentioning before, all the chaos in this world, how much that would have gone away if we were to put aside our pride, put aside all our materialistic needs, sit here and say, hey, we need this, you have this, is there a way we can work it out?
Yeah, it's true. Before we continue with this portion, I just saw a question here from the rally. So if they came from Capella, didn't they know didn't they know there about? Did they know there about the existence of only
one
one
God.
God? So you guys wanna? This is when we were talking about the civilizations that knew there was only one God, but let's explain. Let's explain to our friend Dorelis. So, did all they know about the one God?
No, because that's otherwise all four Adamic races would have known. And we've already talked about the Egyptians and the Hindus.
Exactly.
And the Egyptians were they're the ones that just missed the mark. They're the ones they're the ones that had to be held back. They could have made it, but they were held back. And that's why we don't have that ancient Egyptian race to this day. Is they, in their time here, they were able to catch up and be able to return.
I read something once, or heard somebody say once, that there's a theory that the Capellans did not educate all four races intentionally. That there were some that they allowed to evolve completely differently, with a different set of values. And over time, the belief was the Capellans knew which ones would last and which ones wouldn't.
I have another question here. So basically, the rallies, the civilization that actually knew there was one God and the reincarnate on earth and remember that was one God was the Israelites. The other ones, if they knew, they returned and they forgot. Or as Brian mentioned, they didn't even think about that. So the Israelites, they're the ones that were for sure there is only one God. So Juan mentions, it is interesting to know that since the book was written in 1939, not much has changed. Same issues, same problems. Oh my God, Juan. Yes.
We are slow progress.
It is tough. And it is interesting. The book was written in 39. And on page 66, we have an addendum that say the formation of the state of Israel occurred in 1948. Basically 10 years after this was written. Isn't that interesting? So all this was written 10 years before they were actually granted some land. And then Dorelli says, by the high priest in Egypt had the knowledge. Probably, but as I was mentioning, they kept it just to the enlightened people. The whole population was not allowed to know much about anything that was related to spirituality, for example. So we are continuing with the Judaism incomprehension. So as Brian was mentioning, do you want to add anything, Mark, before we go to the last portion?
Oh my. I think it's that I'm lost in the reality that this book was penned, this text was written in 39, and what the author must have known was happening in 1939.
Yeah, you're right. At the beginnings of World War II.
I mean, Hitler was well into the persecution by then. He hadn't started the mass extinctions, but he was already labeling them.
Isn't that interesting that when we think about a lot of people don't even realize this book was written in 1939 by mediumship, because Chico Xavier was such a humble man from a little tiny city in the middle of Brazil, basically illiterate, writing about civilizations and characteristics. It's like mind-blowing, mind-blowing.
It
But
is.
just talking about this portion, the Judaism incomprehension, I always like to talk about Judas, one of the spirit that actually betrayed Jesus. So in the past, I remember not really understanding how Jesus could choose one of his disciples, his close disciples, and he betrayed him because they all adored Jesus. So I was like, how this guy could sell him by little amount of money. But later on, understanding Spiritism and studying, one speaker actually told me Judas loved Jesus the same way the others loved. But Judas was in this text here. Judas thought Jesus needed a little push to be the king they were expecting, because Judas knew the power of Jesus, knew that Jesus could make amazing things, cure people instantly. And if he did like this, the spirits would come. So he just thought, he's a little slow. Let me give him a push, because when they get him, he will finally do what we wanted. And then it didn't happen. But then he felt that remorse. And then this speaker, who had much more knowledge than me, he said he loved him, but he did not understand. He did not comprehend the real mission of Jesus. He thought if he give a little push, he will finally bring the golden chariot and he would show his light and take all the Romans and put them to be their slaves. So the Israelites would be the superior race in that time. And then I was like, aha! So I finally could have some peace, because I'm like, okay, so Judas actually loved him. He didn't think just of the money. His idea was thinking, I need to help Jesus to be more proactive, even if he was still misunderstanding. But it gave me peace to understand there was not a betrayal per se. But let's finalize. We have just 5 minutes. What can we talk about? The last item in the future.
The one thing that always got me with this one when I was reading through this is just seeing how they have continue to be this rock. As I said, this book was written in 1939, and even now to this day, 2026, they are still that rock. They are still the same throughout history for the most part. They've been sticking to keeping the Torah, keeping the Old Testament, locking it all in, and living that life, keeping to that style. They've been that rigid. They've been that tenacious at holding on to this path and keeping it even into the future. Like you said, very traditional. They pass the traditions from generation to generation to generation so that nothing gets lost over time. And the fact that it has lasted 5,000 years from the time the first books, Genesis, Exodus, all them were written, all the way to today, the fact that all that knowledge is still being passed on generation to generation. And it will keep going into the future.
Interesting.
Mark, what do you want to add?
Well, right here in this text, just read this one section. Jesus has accompanied Israel's dolorous progress down through the centuries of expiatory and regenerative struggles. And, you know, one of the labels, if you will, of Jews in general is that they are financial manipulators, experts in materialism. True or not, it's an interesting reality that through the many generations, there are many Jews who don't flaunt their wealth, but they are in fact very wealthy. And then there are those that are in the public eye a lot, and so on, for whatever reason. More zeros than you and I will ever have. But that's not the point. The point is, a lot of them are very humble. They do not live in the billion-dollar mansions and estates, or drive the fancy cars with chauffeurs, etc. They live very simple lives. But they hoard their money. They're not charitable. And somewhere along the line, that moralistic element exists in a different way within the Jewish faiths. And I say faiths because there are multiple ones. That's a statement from my best friends who've lived this life of Jews, of Judaism since they were born in the 50s. Now,
I think that's even written in the book of Deuteronomy. It was that where they had the things where you have your loan program, and then you get released from your loan after 7 years, but that's it. It's like, but until that time, you're paying your debts, you're paying your dues, and then on the 7th year, you're released.
So there are, if it's true that they have earned all their injustices and all their challenges and etc., then you have to wonder what's contributing to that.
The last paragraph in this chapter brings us some light. So it says like this: new understanding is flowing down from heaven to the hearts of the patriarchs. It will not be long until we see Judaism fully comprehending the sublime mission of true Christianity and aligning itself with all the peoples of earth on the path of salvation as they strive to build a better world.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that nowadays, for example, this is still something difficult to be aligned, but we understand that life is eternal. We will continue progressing. And we also know that in the future, but in a far future, all the religions will still exist, but they will all understand more about spirituality, and it will be accepted. I'm not saying that Judaism, Christianity, Hinduism will disappear. The spirits say no, they will continue. But the acceptance of all of them, and the understanding that the Spiritism is one of them that also brings to enlightenment. This is really wonderful to know that one day all these fights and they saying, no, this is better, that is better, whatever is better, in the future will bring more peace. But as we know, at this moment, this is still a struggle. But it's wonderful to know that one day this will be different and better. So we have one comment. So let's read here. The practice of faiths of one creator versus those of more than one share messages of bettering oneself and being charitable to others as ourselves. Within these messages are the means of managing ourselves, which can allow us to better understand what part of something beyond the words.
Mm.
Thank you for your comment.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was mentioning, it is possible for all of us to mingle with different religions.
Mm-hmm.
What happens, there is a Brazilian speaker called Haroldo Dutra Dias. He used to make some beautiful studies and meetings with different religious groups. But as Haroldo even mentioned, when he brought He brought a Jewish person, a priest, a pastor. He, as a spiritist, and had a nun. They spoke about things they had in common, because that's what we can do at this moment. If we talk about things that are very, very different, not acceptable, it's going to bring war. So when you talk about one thing that all beliefs have in common, God, being charitable, in any other points, then they can talk about their differences in their perspectives, but it's still very positive and very uniting. So this is what we have to think. And one day we will be able to amplify this and not having like a religious wars like used to happen in the past so badly.
Well,
My
like
friends,
like that last paragraph you just read from the book, where, because remember, this book was also, as we said, we talked earlier, the book was written before the creation of the Jewish state. So you reread that paragraph again from that historical context. Even from there, who comes to help the Jews in the times of World War II from the persecution? The Christians are the ones that start jumping in and hiding the Jews in Germany, everything else. So you start seeing that this topic, this last sentence you just, this last paragraph, started showing up in World War II. We started seeing this thing being justified in World War II, and it would later, in that 10-year frame when it became created, you can see that this paragraph was actually starting to be fulfilled.
And look what's happening. Look at what's happening at this very moment. You have various Christian-based countries that are really not, they're Christian from a historical perspective. Today, they are like the US. They're a melting pot of religions and faiths and beliefs from all over the world that have filtered through Europe and living now in all these different countries. But those country governments, they're the ones who are coming to Israel's rescue right now. So it's a real interesting time. That that 1939 text is prophetic.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, this brings us the amazing mediumship that the Chico Xavier had. It's like incredible that these messages could be brought by him in so many years ago. So, my friends, we are out of time, and I'm super happy that we had this wonderful conversation. And as I mentioned before, our world is in turmoil at this moment. So I would like to ask each one of you to pray for our planet, because we know invasions, it is something that I never imagined, like the war, Russia, Ukraine. I never imagined in modern times this was going to happen, but it did happen. So, and so many other things. So we really need to keep our faith, our prayers, and always involved our beautiful planet and the heads of the countries, because people are the ones who cause this, and we don't want to see anything escalating and things getting worse and worse. But we need to be positive and do our part for this to happen. So we need to close. I would like to ask you, Brian, to do our final prayer, please.
All right. Okay. Dear Lord, wonderful Master, mentors of our homes and houses, thank you for bringing us here together today. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to learn and share. Let the discussions we had today inspire us in our hearts and in our minds, so that we may reflect on this that we've discussed, embrace it, and become brighter souls, so we may walk a path that leads us ever closer to that bright light that is our destination. Let what we receive today, our fraternal friendship, our friendly discussions, be an example for us in our day-to-day lives, so we may go forth helping ourselves, our family, our friends, our co-workers, or even just a random person on the street with love, charity, that we may inspire them to reflect on their own past and choose a better path. As we part company, shine down on us with your light and love always. Amen.
So be it.
And so be it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Brian, Mark. It was a blessing to be here with you guys. Thank you, all of you that watched us. I'm just seeing here Bridget and Robbie and Hipólito. Thank you, all of you. And I hope to see you again next month with chapter 8. Thank you. Have a great night. Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Hey.